This is technically our third installment together. Here with Eddie Money, we're going to discuss 4 cards today, whether we would buy, sell, or hold them. We are not suggesting that you buy or sell or hold any of these because we don't understand your risk tolerance. Just understand that we're speaking more from a general sense. We don't also understand your current investment mix or your level of wealth. And the price charts today are going to be from Card Ladder and Market Movers. Let's get this started. Ed, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Phil. Glad to see the series back after a 8-month hiatus, but it's going to be fun going through these cards and see which ones are buy, sell, or hold worthy.
First card, 2018 Topps Update, Juan Soto. This is his hands-on hips variation. A lot of people's favorites in a PSA 10. Pop right now is about 287. Last comp, we snapped these comps about a week before we uploaded this video. So December 6th, the last one sold for $14.40. Ed, what do you think?
Buy. Strong buy on this. I actually just bought the PSA 9 for close to $500. So there is kind of a big price difference between the 9 and the 10, almost $1,000. But I almost bought this. I almost traded for this card at the National in Chicago this year. Strong buy on it. I just think it's a great card to own, especially if you believe in Juan Soto. And I'm a big Juan Soto guy, so I would definitely 100% be buying. I think 1,400 is not bad for this card.
All right. We agree and we disagree at the same time. I, like you, big, long-term Juan Soto believer, long-time Juan Soto believer, and I really like him. I think this card's pretty nice. I'm not usually a huge fan of image variations because players have so many of them nowadays, but with Soto, he only had 2. And the first one, or the other one, is the Gatorade bath, also sideways, and or horizontal, whatever you want to call it. But that one's like super hard to find. I think it's widely thought, or at least on Blowout, they were talking about maybe 300 print run ish, which is basically non-existent. So
yeah, that's like an SSSP.
Right. So this one becomes like the de facto short print that you can actually find on eBay. My issue with this card here, which it's nice seeing that this card's already fallen from like 2,600, so it's clearly a long way away from previous highs, which I like to see. But even though I'm a big follower on Juan Soto long term, his prices are high right now. If there's one baseball player where his cards haven't fallen over the last like 3-4 months, it's Juan Soto. It's ever since like July, August. I think there's a lot of helium there. Juan Soto in 2 of his last 4 seasons, where he actually started the season in like April playing for the big league club, because the shortened season doesn't count, his rookie year doesn't really count. So mostly I'm talking about 2019, 2021. He had a slow start. So whether it could be weather related, it could be just him trying to get into his groove. There could be a chance for you to buy this lower, I think, in April or in May if he does start slow again. Now, keep in mind that there was also an issue with the baseballs last year where I believe like somewhere around June 1st, they changed the baseball to be one that was very difficult to hit for a home run versus one where the offense just like erupted across the league. So I believe it suppressed players' power more so if they were like the traditional ground ball hitter. Austin Meadows is another example. Juan Soto is a ground ball extreme hitter also as well. So that switch could have helped. So maybe it's not a seasonality thing. Maybe it's not a cold weather thing. And also, talking about cold weather, October, Juan Soto, night games, October in Washington, temperatures very similar to April. And we've seen Juan Soto in October, haven't we, Ed?
Yes.
So it's weird. Like, he didn't win MVP, but I think even that week where MVPs were announced, like right around like November 15th, when they always are, I bet even on that day, in the following day, it was a lot easier to sell Juan Soto than even Bryce Harper, who won the MVP. It was kind of already baked into his prices. So again, Juan Soto has been hot for a while. I think he'll stay hot for a while, but slow start. I think that could help. We'll talk a little bit about the lockout and what we think about that later. But I think it's time to
Yeah.
move on to the next. All right. Bat down. PSA 10. Ronald Acuna. This is a staple in our analysis. Pop. Who the F knows? On the Pop report, if you actually like plug in, well, there's no cert number here, which is blacked out. But what you'll notice if you actually go through the Pop report without using a cert number and just searching by set, you'll notice there are 3 lines underneath Ronald Acuna for Series 2. At least 2 of those, I believe, are this card, the bat down card. So there's over 750. There might even be a little bit more than this number here, 806. But there's certainly a lot more than 500 because a lot of people go by that first number. And they're like, oh, Pop 500. No, it's around 800. So given that it's around 800, prices at 1900, that's where it's been for like the better part of the last 2 years. I feel right around 2000. What do you think, Ed?
Now, this card was on the last time that we did this 8 months ago, and I believe both of us. I know for myself, I said buy, and I believe it was a higher price than 1900. 8 months later, with Acuna, where he got injured last year, if I had this card personally, I would probably sell it. Maybe it's between a sell or a hold, but I would probably sell. And the main reason that I would sell is because, not that I don't believe in Acuna, but baseball is such a mentally draining game. It's in my opinion, baseball is the most difficult game mentally to play. And when you're a star player and you just have all this, you're like the franchise kind of player, you're the future of the franchise, and your team wins a championship and you have nothing to do with that team's winning the championship, it is insanely hard to get over that mental hurdle like that. And the last time that we seen something like that in recent sports was with Carson Wentz with the Eagles, and it didn't end well for him in Philadelphia. I'm not saying the same thing's going to happen to Acuna, but it's really, really difficult for a player to get over that type of mental hurdle. Because if you think about it, if Acuna stayed healthy, the Braves probably don't win the World Series. And the reason I say that is because all the players that the Braves got to replace Acuna, Eddie Rosario, Adam Duvall, and Jorge Soler, they were all very prominent and key to their success in the playoffs, in the division series, in the championship series, and in the World Series. I mean, Soler was the MVP of the World Series, and Eddie Rosario was the NLCS MVP. So Acuna is a human being. He sees this. He sees that these replacement players are coming in, and they took him to the next level. So he's going to want to come back quick. Hopefully he gets right and he comes back, but he might try to rush back, and who knows, if he rushes back, maybe he'll get re-injured. He's in a tough situation now, but if he can respond good, and have the right mindset, then he'll be good. But if I was a speculator, or if I was a heavy Acuna guy, and Acuna is a hobby darling, make no bones about it, I would be nervous holding this card. I'm nervous on Acuna going forward until I see him respond from what happened last year. So I would sell. Long story short, there was my long answer on that.
Yeah. With me, it's complicated like you. With me, it's a hold, though. So on the bright side of Acuna, we saw him make a big skills leap this year before he got injured. Talking about year 2021, where he was able to reduce his strikeout percentage. He bumped up his walk rate the year before in 2020. Short sample size, small sample size. Even you could argue even in 2021 because he got injured. But he was able to maintain his power, and I believe he was the MVP favorite before he went down. So team got much better without him, which is a little weird because he was so good. If we recall, for those first couple months or month and a half. MVP favorite by far. Some of that might have had to do with Tatis going down for injury. I forget exactly the timing of that. But I don't think we should discount that and the skills leaps he made. I think Where I'm getting a little frustrated with him, which is similar to you, is some of these like intangible and non-performance related factors, maybe sense of entitlement, maybe the lackadaisical play, maybe the lack of focus, sloppy play in the outfield that potentially led to this injury, which could have been avoided. So long term, I'm very nervous with Acuna. Right now, I feel like it's tough to sell this card right now because there's very few people buying him. But I wouldn't buy him right now, even though there's deals to be had, because I think he's going to be down for a while. Because when does that rebound happen? We saw him in batting practice or swinging the bat. We saw him swinging the bat recently. Some footage of that. Is he going to be ready for the start of the season? The initial expectation was no. Some people are probably worried about the impact to his speed. He's never going to be a 50-50 guy, but guess what? He probably wouldn't have been anyways, because I'm pretty sure his stolen base rate was down in 2021 as well, because they were trying to keep him healthy. But even without those stolen bases, I still think he can be an impact player. I just think like with what's happening with the lockout, you can afford to be patient. There hasn't been a panic yet, I don't think, with regards to prices falling because of fears that there'll be a shortened season or potentially no season at all. I don't think any of that expectation or worry is baked into prices, but at some point it might be. At some point, maybe in mid to late January. I don't know when that could be, but if there's still a lockout, if we're still not getting very many updates, then people might start to panic a little bit. And I think that would still technically be good buying time for Acuna. Like, I don't think his prices are going to come back up yet because I think there's other hype. The hype right now, I think, is Soto, Tatis, Wander, and Witt. And I think it'll continue to be the case till at least late January. And then I think there's another group of players, and I could be completely wrong. This is kind of my guess, my hunch. Hype's a kind of a weird animal to predict, but Acuna is kind of giving people more reservations than some of those other guys, even though they're not established.
I would say out of you were mentioning the lockout. In my mind, the lockout's awful for baseball, and it's awful for the hobby, and it's obviously awful for the hobby too. But if there's one player that I think could potentially benefit from a lockout or things being held up, it would probably be Acuna, because he can get more healthy, get more right, and save some time. That would be maybe the only silver lining of a potential lockout I can think of, if you're heavily into Acuna. But the lockout would just be disastrous for real life baseball and obviously the hobby side of things. That's never a good thing.
That's a good point. Next card, 2019 Topps Chrome Sapphire. Got to have a Sapphire card on there, right? PSA 10 base card, Pop 305. Selling for about $2,300 right now of Fernando Tatis. What do you think, Ed?
I'd sell. This is tricky because Tatis is I would say he's probably the biggest hobby darling, at least from my own experience going to card shows and interacting with dealers who sell. People like the general, I would say your average Joe in the hobby who does modern baseball just absolutely adores Tatis. So at 2,300, if he starts off well, it'll go up, or if he's an MVP favorite, you'll see a spike. But for 2,300, I would probably sell. There's a lot of things about Tatis's game. I like Tatis. I don't want to sound like I'm a hater on the guy, but he has some areas that definitely need improvement. His defense, I think he led the league in errors last year from his position. That's nuts to me. But even with those flaws, he still was top 3 in the MVP for the National League. So, I mean, he has some glaring negatives, but his positives are outshining. But he's still he's super young. I don't know long term. Health is also another thing. I want him to play 162 or play a full season and not get hurt. He's had bad luck with that, but getting hurt. And also, the pop is obviously going to go up 305 because 2019 Topps Chrome Sapphire was printed more than 2018 and the previous years, et cetera, et cetera. So that's going to bump up as well. But yeah, I'm a sell on this one.
Yeah, this one, talking about the pop, technically it's a base card. And as you know, there's been a rotation away from base for the last, 8-9 months. And it's just kind of getting worse out of favor base. So is this technically a base card? Yeah. So it's sort of in no man's land because even though, a print run of around 1,000 being more than 2018 and years before, it's still comparable to probably the image variation of Juan Soto. It's still not a whole lot. So it'd be interesting to see, how these base Sapphire cards are perceived going forward. With Tatis, overall, if I was making like a short-term, whatever you want to call it, like arbitrage play, or he'd be one of my targets.
I agree. Yeah.
Because I think if you can somehow get into his cards, you can probably sell them before the season starts. And it kind of goes with the core four that I mentioned. Now, unfortunately, Soto is very expensive, but I think Wander and Witt, maybe a little more Witt than Wander, there could be a little more room to make money on those cards while the hype is high, because the hype will only build for a guy like Bobby Witt throughout January once he's formally announced for the first time as the number one prospect as part of that January list that comes out, which gets a lot of people's attention. Clearly, he's already the number one prospect on most lists, but I think the January list from Baseball America gets a lot of attention. But Back to Tatis, availability on his stuff's really low right now. If you're to try to find a Bowman Chrome autograph auctioned, good luck. You might be waiting for a while. I don't know if there's one right now, but there's a lot of people that kind of doing the same thing with Tatis. Probably eyeing his cards at card shows, but not really finding much anywhere else, Facebook groups, Instagram, etc. So that window is closing quick, and eventually those, I think you'll see a bump in a lot of his cards. Will this be one of them? I don't know. I prefer the Bowman Chrome autograph. This, I wouldn't be selling it right now. But like you said, there's some question marks. If you hold this card into the season, you've got to worry about that shoulder surgery that he elected not to have. Probably guided by some professional opinions, but it might be something that even if he does his own kind of rehab away from surgery, is he going to continue to miss time because that keeps on popping out? That'll be interesting. But what we can't forget about Tatis, and you said it, Ed, completely dominant when he's on the field, led the National League in weighted OBA, I believe, which is the geek stat that kind of shows per plate appearance dominance. So on a per plate appearance or per game basis, he was the best offensive player in the National League.
His power is ridiculous.
Right. And he has the look. Does he play for the right franchise? I don't think anybody's talking about that anymore, but it used to be, he plays with the Padres. That sucks. Well, nobody's talking about Wander Franco in the Rays, and nobody's going to be talking about Bobby Witt in Kansas City, because you know how I feel about markets. I think it's kind of exaggerated.
Trout plays on the Angels, for God's sake. So
right. Yeah. So yeah, he's got the Instagram followers. He's kind of got the look of a superstar, like a Cristiano Ronaldo type of look. All right, next player and card, 2018 Topps Update rookie debut, PSA 10, Shohei Ohtani, pop. Is that right? Is it just 754?
That seems pretty low.
754. We just verified it. It's now 757. Ed and I were talking a little bit offline about how most of these cards, or a lot of them, ended up going to SGC because it wasn't a big card till midway through the season, or the first couple months of the season. Ed, are you buying this card or what?
Sell. I'm not a fan of rookie debuts. I got a little 8 months ago when we talked about the Tatis Chrome Update rookie debut. We took a little brushback, but I'm going to stay consistent. I'm not really crazy over the rookie debuts. I know it's a more desired photo because it's Ohtani batting, but for $250, no. It's not his true rookie card. Ohtani has other rookies from Topps, and maybe I'll sound like a hobby purist there saying it's not his true rookie, but for 250. There's other Ohtani cards I'd rather have out there in my collection than this one. So if I had this one, I would sell. And I have this in a gold. I just sent it off to SGC. I don't have high hopes that it grades high. I think it might get like an 8.5. I'm hoping for a 9, but when I get it in, I'm most likely going to sell. So I would sell this one.
I'm with you. Strong sell for me. And it looks a little strange. If you follow this chart, this black box kind of gets in the way a little bit, but you see a lot of volatility over the last couple of months. It's like bouncing up and down from like as low as looks to be like 120 to 250. A little strange. But because I think you'd expect a lot of his stuff to just be flat over the last few months. So yeah, strong sell for me. Rookie debuts, you can look at Bryce Harper from 2012 and say, well, he had a rookie debut that holds value, but really, I mean, he didn't really have that many flagship pack-pulled rookies. So the reason why the rookie debut sells for some of those other rookie variations is because those came from complete sets, and the pack-pulled one from Update is just considered more valuable for whatever reason. But obviously, he's got that short print from Series 2. Super tough pull, though. Ohtani here has 2 other pack-pulled rookies that are pretty easy to find. So hitting pose here, right? So you can make that argument, but I'm sure it'll always be preferred a little bit over, relative to some of his other cards because he's hitting. But I think especially this year because he was so dominant from a hitting perspective. What if next year he's a better pitcher than he is hitter? Not saying that's going to happen, but is that going to hurt? Like, does that give this card even more downside in some of the other ones that are maybe super expensive because they're just hitting poses? Yeah, and the fact that it's just like a base card, the fact that the pop is artificially suppressed. I know myself, I probably had like 5 of them in my dollar box I had to pull out. And they were like $3 or $4 because that's how much they were worth about a year ago. So pretty crazy. As you can see, you look back a year, the PSA 10 wasn't worth much more than like $20 a year ago. So it definitely gives me some reason to pause. I just, could this still be a $250 card a year from now? Yeah, I just see more downside than upside. That's what this game is all about for me. Now let's talk about his numbers a little bit, Ed. Ohtani, first half of 2021, his OPS was 1062. Second half, 839. But from a pitching perspective, and I try to break this down because on the surface, like the overall numbers pitching-wise, you wouldn't think that he improved from first half to second half in a significant way. But if you look at the K to walk ratio, one of my favorite stats to look at, it jumped from 2.49 to 7.67. So he was so much more efficient in the second half. So is he going to be a better pitcher next year than hitter? It's possible. He got more efficient. And maybe he was figured out from a hitting perspective, and he wasn't able to compensate. He wasn't able to adjust back to the pitchers adjusting to him. One thing I will point out is that his strikeout percentage, a lot of people think he struck out a lot in the second half. Actually, 29% first half, 31% second half. So that is interesting. Another thing that's interesting, if you're into like geek stats, go to baseballsavant.com and look at the batted ball data and all of the metrics for Ohtani, and then compare them. I'm talking about from a hitting perspective. Look at him as a hitter, and then compare that against Fernando Tatis. Launch angle, exit velocity, average and max, barrel rate, expected slugging, expected batting average, ISO, and all the power stats, even sprint speed. He's basically Tatis. And we talked about Tatis being, the best player on a per plate appearance basis in the National League. Ohtani has the potential of being like a top 5 pitcher in his league, in the American League, and also being a Tatis from a hitting perspective. Albeit a lot of that was, pushed up based on his first half performance. But Ohtani's an interesting one to look at because ordinarily he would get offseason buzz, and he's not getting it right now, but I don't think he deserves it. And the reason why is because that lasting impression of what he showed us in the second half, where everybody kind of zoned in on his hitting, the pitching isn't as important, wasn't as, widely looked at, I feel like. but from a hitting perspective, he fell. And a lot of people are wondering if that's going to carry over to next year versus Soto. Soto didn't win the MVP in his league, but he just left such a lasting impression. You look at Wander Franco, did the same thing. His season was like, okay, wasn't like amazing. The on-base streak he had was pretty cool. He was still like, 30 games away from the record. Although I think he like tied or beat the record for a rookie. But like, it's that lasting impression. It's what Wander Franco did, hitting those 2 home runs in that last short series. It's what Juan Soto did the last 4 months of the season, especially the last couple months of the season. He really turned it on. And Ohtani has made us fear that he just won't be nearly as good next year. And I think that's why he's not getting any appreciation. I think, like Acuna, he's not going to start to see a surge till later on, maybe like February. In my opinion, again, this is all based on, a guess, basically. I could be completely wrong. But I think you have more time to wait for Ohtani. I think you do. And then it goes back to the lockout and where that's at that point in time. And the fears could really start affecting the hobby because they're not right now. The lockout fears and anticipations are not at all baked into the market prices of contemporary baseball cards.
I agree.
I can see it. Vintage, modern, ultra modern. It's just not there. So better for worse. All right, that is it. Tell us what you think in the comments of the 4 players we discussed today. And like, comment, subscribe, guys. Take care. You said, and
the Chrome.
Yeah,
Harper has a lot of rookies, man. He has a lot of rookies.
No, but
a lot.
All right, wind this back a little bit. Just kidding.